Hi everyone, welcome to today's workshop. So what we're going to do today is an exercise called drawing in shapes, and we're going to start by doing a little warm-up, and the warm-up is called left hand right hand drawing. So the left hand right hand drawing is basically about trying to draw with both your dominant and non-dominant hand. So your dominant hand is the one that you always write or draw with, and your non-dominant is the one that you don't, and that's usually a little more difficult. So I'm right-handed, my right is my dominant and my left is my non-dominant. And how we're going to do that today is you're going to do portraits. So in your classroom, I'd like you to pair up, so either with the person you're beside or the person who's opposite you. One person is the model, one person is the artist. You do the exercise and then you're going to swap over the roles. So the other person becomes the artist and the other person becomes the model. I'm going to talk you through the exercise. We're going to do this warm-up and then we're going to do a specific exercise with drawing in shapes where you're drawing into a grid. So because I don't have anybody in here with me, I'm going to do a portrait of Michael D. Higgins. And I'm going to demonstrate now how I do the left hand, right hand drawing. So here's my picture of Michael D, which I'm going to draw from. And here's my piece of paper. So I'm holding it landscape. I divide it in two. And on the left hand side, I write left, right hand side, I write right. So on the left hand side, I'm going to use my left hand, and on the right hand side, I'm going to use my right. So I'd like each of you to start doing this portrait. So instead of looking at Michael D, you're going to be drawing a portrait of the person opposite you. And I want you to do the first portrait with your non-dominant hand. So for me, I'm right-handed, so my non-dominant hand is my left hand. If you're left-handed, your non-dominant hand is your right. So you're going to start with the hand that you don't usually draw with. So you can see here, I'm just doing a really quick portrait, and I'm going to draw in all my details, and I'm drawing with the hand that I'm least sure of drawing with. Okay. So what I'd like you to do is, if your teacher can just set an alarm for 7 minutes, and I'd like you to do this first portrait with your non-dominant hand in 7 minutes. Okay, off you go. So here is a sped up version of me finishing that portrait. Don't worry about it being too perfect. This is just a little warm-up exercise, but put in any details that you can see. Okay, once your 7 minutes are up, finish that portrait and then swap over to your other hand, to your dominant hand. So for me, the dominant hand is my right hand. So now I'm going to go for my right hand. I'm going to draw the same person, and I'm going to use the same technique. Draw my face. Halfway down are the eyes, halfway between the eyes and the chin is the nose, and halfway between the nose and the chin is the mouth. And I'm going to start drawing with my dominant hand, which for me is my right. So your teacher is now going to set another 7 minutes, and in 7 minutes you're going to draw a really quick portrait with your dominant hand. Go. So here I am, just sped up version of me finishing that dominant hand portrait. So the idea behind these swapping between your dominant and non-dominant hand, it's basically a warm-up, but it's also a good way to kind of focus your brain and to think a little bit differently. And you will find if you do exercises like this, where you draw something with your non-dominant and then your dominant hand, your drawings will improve. It's a great and really easy exercise to complete. So now what I'd like you to do is swap roles. The person who was the model becomes the artist, and the person who was the artist becomes the model. And so the second person gets a chance to try the non-dominant and dominant hand portraits. Same again, time each for 7 minutes. Use your non-dominant hand, do a portrait. Use your dominant hand, do a portrait. Okay, so with that, really what we were doing was doing a little bit of a warm-up for our next part, which is drawing in shapes. So you've done a little bit of this when you did the Branner art flag, where you were looking at shapes in nature and in leaves and plants, and then you're drawing those shapes. So this is a little bit different, where you're actually drawing from a shape that's in a grid, and this is an exercise that's really designed to focus you into looking for shapes when you're drawing. I think I spoke to you a little bit when I was in with you about people drawing in both lines and shapes, and that some people find one of those two more natural and some people do a little bit of both. It's good to know how to do both. So this next exercise is specifically designed to get you drawing in shapes and to think a little bit about measurements and how to fit things if you're drawing from reference, which is drawing from another image, how to fit that into a space that you're drawing it into. So it's also using a grid, which you may have done before. So I hope you enjoy, and I can't wait to see what you're going to make at the end of this. So you all should have two sheets, one page with reference pictures and one page with a grid page written on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start drawing what is in your reference picture onto the grid page, and we're going to do that by using shapes and the grid. So what I'm doing is I'm looking to see what shape can I see in that top picture of the pig, and that I think is going to be easy for me to copy into the grid below. I always start with what is the easiest shape, and I know you did this when you drew from nature for me in the other project. So I'm looking at what is the simplest shape. The first shape I drew is the one there just above the snout of this little pig, and I start thinking about how those shapes fit into a grid. So every time I'm looking at this, I'm trying not to look at the white object, which is an animal. I'm trying to look at the black shapes and concentrate on them. And what I'm trying to do is trick my brain into forgetting what the object is, which is a pig, and I'm trying to make my brain just see the shapes, because if you concentrate just on the shapes themselves, you will draw them more correctly, because you're not constantly telling your brain it's a pig, it's a pig, it has to look a certain way. You're actually drawing what you see. So I think I mentioned before, observational drawing is about drawing what you see, and especially drawing what you see as opposed to what you know is there. So shape drawing and drawing in grids, where you can see I'm trying to draw the shapes that I see, and you can see I'm also kind of measuring a little bit sometimes with my pencil, and I'm seeing if the shape I'm drawing in the grid below looks similar to the shape in the image above. Okay, and I'm just trying to draw it. Every time I draw the shape, I colour in the black or the dark. I shade in the black or the dark to see if I've got the shape right. So you can see I'm using the lines of the grid to measure where certain parts of the shape should go, and then I'm also measuring sometimes with my eye, and sometimes I'm measuring with my pencil, where I'm using my pencil to measure from the image above down. And as you see here, I started with the simpler shape, the little shape above the snout, and as I go on, I'm getting to the more complicated part. See there, I'm measuring with my pencil to see from the center line to where that little foot touches the bottom. I'm trying to see how long that is. So if there's any distance you're unsure about, use the grid to help you place the edge of a shape. Okay? So at all times you're trying to think of these as shapes and not parts of the animal or parts of the pig. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'd like each of you take a look at your reference picture, have the grid page beside it, exactly the way I have here, where you have them as close as possible, and just start shading in the shapes that you see. And as I said, start with the easiest one, the one that is simplest for you to draw, and then do the one next to that or the one next to that. If you find something really complicated, a little bit like when drawing the plants, move on, move away from the complicated one, do a simpler one, and by drawing more of the rest, that complicated one is going to be easier to draw towards the end. So I often skip bits that are a bit difficult. If I find something really difficult to place or to measure, or that the shape is awkward, I'll draw another shape and come back to it, because if I've drawn the other shapes around it, that one suddenly gets much easier. Okay, so make it as simple for yourself as possible. And what you're trying to do while doing this is you're trying to get your brain working in your kind of creative visual side, which is your right brain. Okay, so we use our left brain for language and reasoning, and our right brain is used for creativity, music, visual art. And by doing an exercise like this, you're actually trying to move your brain to work in that right hand side, and just observe closely what you're seeing and not worry about what it is. Okay, so observe the object and the shapes contained within. Okay, so you can see there I'm measuring that top distance just to make sure I have that right. I'm trying to draw the curve, and you can turn your sheet if you want to, and then I'm going to draw my last shape in. So I'd like you to press pause now, and I'd like you all to try do that first animal, draw the pig into that first grid shape. So once you've got that one complete, your brain is already now starting to think more in shapes. And so you can see the second one is on purpose much more complicated. And the reason being is, having done one of these shape drawings, suddenly the second one is going to be easier for you to do. It would have been hard to do this one first. So as before, you're just going to measure where you think parts of these shapes intersect with the grid. So intersect means where they cross over the grid. And for me, as before, I'm starting to draw the easiest shape I see. I think that shape there is the easiest one. And then I'm going to draw on from there. And actually you can see I get to a certain point here and I'm not actually sure about drawing the rest of that. So I'm going to move to another part of the grid and I'm going to draw the parts that intersect with the bottom. And I'm just going to, like that, use my pencil again to measure where on the grid I think parts should go. And I'm going to draw a shape that I find easier to draw. So that is the rule with doing all kinds of drawing, actually, and all kinds of artwork. If you're trying to do something complicated, do the easiest parts first, and then the more difficult parts will be much easier to do afterwards. So now I'm going to get you to just pause this and everybody draw away at their second shape drawing. So here's just a sped up version of me finishing that drawing. So what you should have at the end of this is 2 fully completed shape drawings. Okay, and so a little like the first exercises we did, they're just a way of training you to look a little bit differently and draw a little bit differently, and they're to fine-tune your observational and your drawing skills. So that's your skills in looking and your skills in physically drawing. Good luck with all of those exercises. I hope you enjoy them. Thank you so much for your comics. I really enjoyed them. They were a lot of fun. So I gave a little bit of feedback to everybody, which I hope is useful, but the comics were great. There were some really funny ones, there were some really clever ones, some had really interesting story, some had really interesting visual storytelling, some had great words. There was a lot in all of them, so I was really impressed. They were fantastic. So yeah, I really hope you enjoy this next project, and I can't wait to see your work, and then we'll be doing one more by post after that. Bye.